Hey everyone, this is AutoML training community meeting on 6th of September. Nice to see you all. So I think we can start maybe with a quick introduction today. So we have some new folks in the community. So I can start with myself. So I'm Andrei. I am AutoML training community maintainer of training operator and KT project. Mainly hosting the meetings here and maintaining the KT component training operator. Do you have anything else? You can introduce yourself to the community.
I'll go next. I'm Jim Halfpenny. I'm from Stackable. We make open source operators for lots of different data components. Spark being one of them, hence my presence here.
Nice to meet you, Jim.
Hello, I'm Marcin. I'm tech lead on GK batch team at Google.
Nice to meet you, Markin. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who just want to introduce himself?
Hey, I'm Josh Bottom. I work as a Kubeflow community product manager. I'm also on the Kubeflow community interim steering committee.
Great, thank you, Josh. So I think we can get started. Maybe quickly before we jump to our main agenda regarding to Spark operator discussion, we can quickly cover the release planning. And I guess we're kind of on track for AutoML training side. So the 0.16 release for KTIP has been cut. I think it's right now we're on RC1 as far as I can see. We didn't see any issue from the KTIP side. Everything is good, is doing good right now. So I think once we have some sort of distribution testing, we can cut the release. So maybe I think we will do it around October. So we have some time because we just want to see whether distribution will find any issues with this new release. So from the triaging standpoint, I don't see any kind of problems from the user side. So looking through the training, I guess we also updated the changelog for 1.7 release. So I have some breaking changes. I think, Josh, that might be useful for you, if you wondering what kind of breaking changes we have. We identify them here for the training operator side. And we also identify some new features, some bug fixes, and other PRs that emerged. So let me just add this link here.
Hey, Andre, there's no breaking changes on any of the schemas, anything like that?
I don't think so. Let me just double check. I think for the main changes from the KDIP side, we changed the KDIP config, but this is mainly for cluster admin, basically for people who installing KDIP, not for people who actually running the experiments. So we didn't do any kind of changes for the APIs. So I think the upgrade should be quite smooth for all of the users. They just need to apply the new manifest, and everything should be work as expected. I think that we still need to update the documentation side, especially for KT, because this is the major things that we basically we're changing the KTIP config API structure. And currently our documentation, we still have the legacy version there. So nothing special. From the API standpoint, we didn't change anything yet. I can just put the link here as well. So do we have any questions so far for the release? Any problems from this component? I think maybe I just need to mention that again, as the major thing here, we changing the KTIP config APIs, and currently we're supporting the 1.25, 26, 27 with the Kubernetes version. Also from the Kdip side, we kind of like, so this change basically significantly improved the installation part and simplify the settings for the controllers. And also right now, since we changed the Kdip webhook policies to failure, like we could identify the issues with the webhook much faster compared to what we had before. Also, there are like some changes for the UIs, specifically for looking the logs of the trials, and some like SDK improvements for to make sure like data scientists can submit their hyperparameter tuning experiments easier. Yeah, and from the training side, I guess let me just take a look what we have here. Yeah, so there are like few scheduled plugins that we currently like support in addition to gang scheduling, and I think like there are also like few changes for yeah, like we merging the Kubeflow command to training operator, and doing some other changes for basically for cleanup code, because there are a lot of like legacy code that exists right now. So community did some changes to improve the code base of training operator repo. Yeah. So are there any questions to the release?
You said that the webhook is much faster. Where would an end user kind of see that experience? What would be the embodiment of that?
Yeah, I think it is not faster. I think it's basically we can identify issues right now on the webhook side. Like for example, if because previously we saw the issues that some of the users they don't like properly define the certificates, and they for that reason they cannot like submit the experiments. But right now they will see this issue beforehand. So when they submit the experiment, the control plane will show them that that this like the webhook just doesn't work, because previously they have to go to the controller logs and check like the whole like controller tip control logs. And right now, since you're changing the failure policy, everything is just done automatically. Yeah, but it is not about optimization here. It's about like the fault tolerance more.
Oh, this is somewhat better user management or error handling
Yeah, that's
or configuration.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so let's see like how the distribution testing will go. Like in any case, if we're going to identify any issues, we will make another RC. But so far, like we're good to go for 1.8. Okay. Yeah, also I want to quickly so any other questions for the release, or we can move on? Okay. Yeah, so there is an issue for in the Kubeflow repository about like the fate operator. And just give you a little bit of context, like previously, I think around what is it? Like maybe 3 years ago, we created this kind of fate operator repository to support like federated AI in Kubeflow. And basically there is a project called Fate, which basically give you an ability to run like federated machine learning jobs. And it was an effort to apply this framework on top of Kubernetes using the Kubeflow previously. And right now, from my understanding, this community created their own kind of repo called KubeFate. And right now, this repo is being maintained by, from my understanding, by VMware, but I might be wrong here. But I asked someone from this community to attend this calls and just discuss how we can collaborate, because I guess we don't have any story about federated learning right now within Kubeflow. And if some of the folks from this community will be interesting, we're more than happy to collaborate. But I guess like we can give them maybe more time to to track this issue and provide the feedback, what we can do with the repo, because otherwise we just need to archive it, because this repo is no longer maintained, at least for now. Yeah, I don't see anyone on the call today. As asked, maybe we can give more time folks to join us. But just do you know anyone from this community that we can ping, or?
Yeah, I mean, if it's VMware, I'd start with Anna and see if she could get us to somebody, but perhaps there's someone else
Okay.
that can help us along with this. I remember this project, but you know, I noticed it kind of died out a little bit, so probably need to see if there's still life there in the user base. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the question is like, can Kubeflow like give them some sort of can we will it give any benefits by collaboration with the Kubeflow basically, and so they can just move on its own with the Kubeflow project. So this I don't know, like because the training the itself Fate operator maybe was not designed to run distributed training jobs, and the training operator machinery, for example, like all of the training operator controllers, they're designed to run distributed training jobs. And the question is like, will I have any benefits of merging this repo together? Like this, I don't know. So I guess like we just need to give them more time to answer on the issue, and just to see if there are any kind of collaborations we can make between us. Yeah, so let's yeah, makes sense. I will try to track this during like our calls, and just to see if we will get any feedback. Also, yeah, we can maybe ping Anna if she's aware of any kind of members from VMware who can help us about it. Okay, so yeah, I think we can maybe jump to the Spark operator discussion then, and maybe like you can give a little bit of a context of a background about the community and the project itself, and then maybe we can discuss how we can move forward.
Okay, so the project has been started by Google about 5 and a bit years ago, and during that time it seemed to be like the only Spark operator, an easy way to run Spark on Kubernetes. Eventually, about a year ago, due to some organization changes on Google side, the main maintainer changed the team and is not maintaining the code anymore. So PRs are not being merged, issues are not being resolved. However, there is still quite a few users on both our Google Cloud and on other clouds that are heavily invested into Spark Operator. They are running workloads using it, and they are looking for alternatives or support to actually move forward with what they have right now. So I'm looking for a place and a community that would be able to keep this project alive, and the community that actually runs Spark workload. I'm working on batch team, but my task is not to run Spark. I am trying to make GKE like the good place to run various batch AI/ML related workloads. I'm not a Spark expert, so I personally cannot do it, and we don't have the necessary expertise on our team. However, I hope that there is some interest in other communities and experts on the matter that could possibly take over the project from Google and push it forward.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you for explanation. Yeah, that makes sense. I think like the main question. So let me also like ask you a few questions. So the users who actually run the Spark operator, like, are they data scientists or are they kind of more data analysts, data engineers?
So Spark operator allows you to create ephemeral Spark clusters using Spark job CRDs in a similar fashion that you create, I know, MPI clusters, TensorFlow clusters, and you have this in Kubeflow, this job type CRD, and that's how users were playing with Spark operator. Like, so the use cases are pretty similar here. So data scientists, researchers were using it to start their workloads, get the job done, and on the way start the cluster and disbandon the cluster after the job was completed. Normally, if you try to deploy Spark cluster on Kubernetes, it's not ephemeral, it's for multiple users and for multiple applications. It has its pros, but it also has consent for some users. Having an ability to run ephemeral cluster was quite an important thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think the question is like as we asked previously, whether like Spark operator can reuse some training. So we have that training operator kind of project, right, where we maintain all of these distributed training jobs for TensorFlow, PyTorch, MPI, MXNet, XGBoost. So the reason like why we have this unified repo, because all of these jobs are similar. So all of these jobs, they have similar APIs and they're using the similar kind of scalar plugins and like the run policies. And that is why we kind of like try to merge them in the one repo, because like historically it was like separate repo for every framework. But since like all of them quite similar, we merge all of them all together. So I think the question is here for Spark, I guess like you have a different kind of like instances, right? So looking to, you have like the Spark, what is it? Just give me a second. So Spark application, right? So how you creating, like you have the Spark job CR, but you also have other CRs, right? Like the Spark cluster CR, which is controlling how this job has been scheduled and for other things. So we just need to understand from the user perspective, like what is the, first of all, like whether like this project should live, should it be a part of the training operator, or it should be like an independent project with itself kind of backend, right? And who is actually can maintain this? So we need to find like the list of people from the community who is willing to help to push this forward. Because from the Kubeflow perspective, like as I mentioned in the issue, we don't have any kind of story around like data preparation right now. So yes, we have like Kubeflow pipelines as the as the glue to connect like different kind of components and different projects to like different components together to have like the end-to-end ML lifecycle. But users, they still need to kind of, if they want to do some data preparation on Kubernetes, they still need to like create this kind of like Spark orchestration by themselves, right? So Kubeflow doesn't offer any services around this, right? So from your perspective, do you think like Spark should live like independently if like we decide to like just make it under like Kubeflow components?
I don't have strong opinion whether it should be live independently or should be merged into whatever framework you have. So my main motivator is to have like a good way of running Spark jobs on Kubernetes cluster. Whether it's with Spark on a Kubernetes operator or with some other operator, personally, I don't that much care. However, given that currently that's the only operator available, at least the only that I am aware of, then obviously my focus is on trying to bring as much life into this operator. If you want to cut half of the API in order for it to fit into your idea of running jobs, that's probably still better than allowing it to die completely and not having any reasonable support in Kubernetes for Spark at all. So
And yeah, go ahead.
I'm not in position to make any demands from you, like whether making it a part of the framework or hosting it independently. I'm just trying to find a place for it to live, if it makes sense, or somehow make sure that users, including selfishly users on Google Cloud Platform, have a way to effectively run Spark. If it's with the code that is already there, then that would be great, probably, because like the time to market would be smaller, and users already use these APIs. But if you decide to redo the APIs somehow in order to make it better fit for other Kubeflow jobs, that's probably fine by me as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in open source, like Apache, for example, doesn't have any Kubernetes operator, which it exists in open source, right? So this is on
there's the stackable operator. So we've got an open source Apache Spark operator. It's not as mature as the Google one, but I think we wanted to reach out. We saw this sort of came up and it was relevant. We want to get our operator to be sort of have feature parity with the Google one. I'm not sure whether we'd adopt the existing code base, but it might be worth looking at whether we can let's say merge the features that are in there if possible. I mean, that's what we aim to do, and get that there. So it's kind of, I'm sort of pitching Stackable might be an alternative, possibly a place for a Spark operator to live. I'm not sure whether we'd adopt all that code because we've already got one. It's already part of a bigger data platform that we're building, but it certainly can run standalone. It's something that Kubeflow could adopt if they want to. So I suppose my question is it worth looking at pouring the efforts into the stackable one? It's also open source, it's 100% free as well, and let's say just get us feature parity with that Google one, or is it worth looking for a home to maintain that code base?
So putting all of the feelings aside, I don't personally care whether it's your code or my code, or if you and your company is interested in maintaining Spark operator long term, and you already have people familiar with it, and they are working on it, and you are committed to doing it, that might be actually a better idea to go forward with your operator if you are willing to keep it alive. In our case, it's that we have half that code that I am trying to bring back to life. And that means that we don't have people who are super familiar with the code. We don't have a company that's standing behind because Google is pulling back from owning it. And we need to find it. On the other hand, we have code that more or less works, and we have users who are still using the APIs that were available for the past 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could somehow make the existing users happy, or make the transitions from one operator to another operator relatively seamless, and maybe borrow some code, that probably would be like a great outcome.
Well, we
even meant that we kill the Spark on Kubernetes operator by Google completely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, open source is my motivation. I'm happy whoever writes it, but we are definitely committed to it because it's part of our platform. So we do have a community of people who use Spark, our Spark operator. We've got a very similar, I think on the surface of it, at least sort of API, you can define Spark applications in Kubernetes and run them like that. I would be, I'd be happy to say we can step up and bring that up, and it's worth having a chat to see how we can support the existing users, or whether we can ease that transition over if that code's if it's not going to find a maintainer for as is. I mean, we'd be more than happy to have that sort of conversation.
So, may I ask a question? So, Jim, like, I guess like we're talking about migrating these code bases to another like GitHub org, right? So, I guess like the question is here, where like the project will get like more kind of maintainers and the kind of like neutral place to live, right? Because like today, right, so Kubeflow like is under like CNCF, right? We don't have any kind of like strong company which is staying behind Kubeflow. It's like the whole project is driven by the people from many different companies today. So I think the question is like, how would it be interesting for you guys to like collaborate with the Kubeflow community to maintain it under our org, or you want to like maintain it completely separately, right?
My thoughts, I would probably want to maintain it separately, just because we have it as part of a bigger platform. So for instance, we've got HDFS, we've got Kubernetes, lots of Kafka and NiFi, lots of other components. So we're working on keeping them interconnected. If it was under Kubeflow, I think we'd lose the interconnectedness of the platform. But we're certainly committed to maintaining our operator. And if that could provide an alternative and a new home for some of this code, we can take that across and port what we need across to get that feature parity. I think we'd be happier keeping hold of control of that. Only insofar as it's still a community thing. Everything's open, everything's in GitHub, and we welcome contributions. We're not trying to put it behind a sort of company sort of paywall. It's our intention that everything remains 100% open source and free forever. So.
And we're speaking about like the Apache GitHub org, right? So
So
we're speaking about like what GitHub organization, like when we're speaking about like neutral place to live for this code base. So which GitHub org we're speaking about?
The stackable one. The stackable tip.
I think it would be nice if you can just share and I can just make
it. Certainly. Let me I'll get the link. Pop it in the chat here if that's all right. Do you want me to pop it? I'll put it in the chat. That's probably the easiest place to put it. So we've got our operator there. It's currently under OSL version 3 license. But if that's a problem, if you'd rather it was ASL 2.0 or something like that instead, I think we'd be open to changing the license. But I'm not sure there's that much friction between OSL and the ASL licenses.
Yeah, I see. So I mean, George, do you have any like opinions? Like, what do you think? Like, I guess like from the user survey, like again, like our users, like the Kubeflow users who just do machine learning on Kubernetes, they want to see Spark within installing, like which installed as part of Kubeflow umbrella, right? They want to Spark independently. They want to use Spark as part of the whole kind of ecosystem, because like similar to like training jobs, like some of the users using just the training operator in production without the whole kind of Kubeflow bundle. They just use the one component. Some of the users just install the Kubeflow as the product and just use it for their customers. So there are like different kind of like users that we have today. And like, as we said, like we don't have any story around Spark today, right? And there is like one of the most kind of asks from the community to support this, right? Just go ahead.
I mean, having worked on a few of these, can you hear me? Kind of partnerships or integrations, it's really, you need end users and you need maintainers and a roadmap and sustained, as you well know, Andre, you've done a very good job in this. But Spark here, and this is the 2022, but it's come up on every single survey I've ever done over the last, whatever, 4 or 5 years. 40% of the Kubeflow users, 58 people in this particular one out of 145 responses. And Jim, if you need a copy of this, it's right on our website, or you can take a snapshot of it. I don't care. But, I think in my opinion, what I'm more interested in is supporting the end users in a way that that they feel like they have some form of support. And if they want to buy commercial support to get a higher level, they have that option, right? But perhaps they have an option that works and is somewhat documented and, is standard open source kind of functionality. The question is how would we as the Kubeflow community work with something like Stackable community? Would they have to run 2 clusters basically to be able to run Spark separately from the Kubeflow cluster? Or would it be something different, right?
So I think as far as that goes, picking up that last point, I think they could, they'd be more than happy to run the stackable operators in the same cluster. They don't have to be separate. Part of what we're doing with keeping everything open is we don't want to put walls between us and other projects. We want to be able to run alongside things, as well as rather than instead of, we're not doing that sort of data platform land grab. And from the terms of the sort of the support without the sort of commercial side of thing, we obviously get everything's on GitHub, so we accept issues and pull requests there. We've got a Discord server where people can ask questions. So we're trying to build a community around it rather than just trying to build a product with, there's no proprietary layer to give you people like lock-in for. Just for a bit of background, I spent about 7.5 years at Cloudera, so I know all about taking open source software and locking people into it. So we're definitely trying to avoid that. There's hence Kubernetes is our the framework we use. There's nothing proprietary in there. So we try to be open. We accept community code. We accept issues from the community. We have Discord channels where people can chat with us. Again, we're trying to build that community. I think it's a good opportunity if we can sort of dip into the existing Spark and Kubernetes community. I know Spark's still really popular in terms of data platforms as well as AI and ML. So I still think it's got legs. I think it's one of the things that sort of come from the Hadoop world that's going to survive and keep going.
So we have this concept of add-on projects. I think there's another name in the manifest. Maybe we could bring up the way that we build the Kubeflow manifest. But I assume that not everybody, we get a lot of complaints that we try to be too prescriptive in the way that we do installations at times. We do give people the ability to install a complete Kubeflow cluster with everything, and then we give them a chance to pick and choose what components they want. In my opinion, I don't know if people would want the Spark operator installed by default. I think it would be nice. It would be a great addition. But then I'm not sure exactly if the UI changes and some of the other things about how people would actually access the Spark workflows. So that's one question that I kind of have, and it sounds like if we went that direction, it might be a multi-phased approach. But the other part of it is, look, I'm very conscious that Stackable is a company and has to make revenue, right? And I want this to be, if we went down this path where you guys were adding value to Kubeflow, I'd want some way for you guys to be able to literally make money, right? And that you would get credit and exposure, and people would know that you're the people behind it, and you know that you accept other people. It's an open source project, but you know, if they really want an SLA or something like that, they've got an option. The problem that I see in my mind here is that you could have people that are supporting Kubeflow, and then they would have to decide whether they're supporting the Kubeflow operator. And then, but then, you know, how does that work with you guys? If you guys are supporting the operator, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how that, you know,
Yeah,
really with
this
somebody like Canonical or Nutanix or somebody else that charges for services, right?
Yeah, I mean, people don't want to pay more than one bill for the same platform. So the idea of buying support for Kubeflow and Stackable, but it all looks like one platform, is probably a bit grating. I would imagine a good sort of model would be to have it as perhaps a supported component within Kubeflow, where we have that that push down agreement that if somebody raises a Spark case, it gets pushed to us. I don't know exactly how that would work, but I've certainly seen that kind of third-party support model work sometimes well, not so much so. But yeah, for instance, you know, Oracle very sneaky at doing this, and they sell products that aren't theirs and then have this push down support model, and it certainly can work. As long as, but yeah, it's very much based on that relationship. You've got to have that relationship, you've got to have that trust, you've got to have a good flow there.
Well, and we have similar with the serving components, right? I mean, Kserve is a serving component, but there's also Selden and BentoML, who are both open source, but also have a paid versions of what they do. So, I mean, this is not, it's not unprecedented for us to have an add-on component that isn't in the core Kubeflow that is supported by the community in some way from an installation standpoint. And then, but let me ask you this, where would this live from a working group standpoint? Would it be in this working group, or would we create a new Spark working group? What's the theory here?
I kind of feel a Spark working group of its own might be merited, because I'm well aware that it sounds like I'm coming here and railroading the very generous offer to pass on the Google maintained code. And it's not a competitive thing here. You know, as part of the open source community, we want to be sharing the useful output that we've got and creating an operator. I think Spark itself is big enough to warrant its own working group, and I think it's important to make sure we get that integration right, because at the moment we could argue that the Google one and the Stackable one are two competing APIs, and we want to try to roll that into one thing or pick one of those that works with Kubeflow. And I don't know what your thoughts are. I think a separate working group would make sense.
My gut feel is, as much as I appreciate the folks that have contributed and the quality of the Google code, if you guys have written your own code, you're probably going to want to support that. So I don't have a problem with you guys cherry picking out of what you like about the Google code and bringing it into your code if you wanted. But what I try to do, like we've tried this with MLflow and a few other organizations or people that have, you know, had an MLflow integration, is just to say, look, if we're going to do this, it has to be mutually beneficial. You guys have to have a path to be successful. We want, and I think that, you know, we need end users to kind of help drive what the roadmap needs to look like. And we need to have at least the guts to sustain for probably 3 releases. Andre, we're running releases about every 6 months now. So it's kind of like, I'd rather see people who have some form of commitment that say they can stay with it for 1.5 years to see if the market actually develops, if the markets are big enough to kind of, there's enough overlap and enough synergy. But for me, from a Kubeflow, you know, overall standpoint, I just want to make sure that it's economically viable for both sides, right? And then the last part is, how's the integration actually work? That's probably going to have to work with what we call our manifest working group, which does the installation and a lot of the integration work on the front end. So we'd have to have a conversation there. I've been talking a lot. Andre, do you have difference of opinion?
Yeah, I just want to have like few thoughts. Like, I think again, it's up to like you, Mark, and like other folks who actually develop the Spark operator to decide. But I guess like your main motivation to find like the folks who actually going to maintain the code base of Spark operator and just try to push this forward for your customers and for other.
Whatever it will be. I'm not super attached to this code, and Google as a company has never made business out of Spark operator other than selling hardware and it runs on it. But for some reason, the company is not investing into it anymore, and but the users are still there. So if I support GKE users using slightly different operator that will be maintained, probably that's also fine. Ideally, of course, I would like this operator to be fully revived, but I'm realistic about options and incentives that others may have to pick half abandoned code and starting to maintain it. So
Yeah, I understand that definitely. I mean, I just want to say like from the Kubeflow perspective, like again, like many people who are actually active in the community, they kind of like they cannot just basically contribute to any open source tool that there is exists in the industry, right? So they have like some sort of agreement that they can only contribute to our like organization, right? And we have few folks who are only like active because of this, right? Like, for example, we cannot like from the Kube community perspective, we cannot guarantee if the Spark operator will live like under another GitHub org that the same people will going to maintain it, right? And we also can promote it. So I think this definitely worth a discussion broader to from one of the community calls. So we have the kind of like bi-weekly community calls. So we actually weekly community calls every Tuesday, because like it seems like this topic is a little bit more than just a training site. Because I understand that there is a possibility to run like ML training on Spark, but there is a much more than just a training site. The question is, do we want to establish a new working group? I think this is debatable because not like, for example, like many people not only use Spark for data preparation, right? There is like Dask exists in the industry, right? There is also Ray. So Ray also like supports some distributed strategy in the like in competitive to Spark, right? So there are like other tools which exist for in AML world that people are using. So I think we might need to discuss this again on Tuesday and just to see how like broader community think about it, right? And where exactly this should live. But if you want to have support, I like definitely agree with Josh. The project needs to have like vendor neutral foundation to be developed, right? Similar to Kubernetes, to Istio, to Kubeflow, Knative, other projects, right, that exist today. So yeah, I think like maybe we can just do another like follow-up discussion on Tuesday if you guys are available.
Yeah,
and
available.
Yeah, and I think that dcube or One Convergence and KF Deploy, which is Matthew Wicks's organization, and maybe a few others, have developed or supported a Spark integration with Kubeflow at one point. But I've never seen anybody really qualify it as this is formally being supported, and we're all pulling in the same direction. It's been like a bunch of bits and starts. We had the Google stuff. We've had a couple other people that have talked about it. But there has been significant interest in the community. There is a huge, the difference between maybe Ray and some of the others, which are newer and probably, really good and growing communities. Spark's been around a very long time, has a very large user base, right? And I think there are people that do and are trying to figure out how to get more life out of it. And I think putting it on Kubernetes is something that some people do have some interest in. I just don't know how do we motivate the users to show up and contributors to work together, right? You know, we're going to need a roadmap, and then the vendor neutral part of it that Andre talked about, right? We don't mind partnering, even if it's outside of Kubeflow. It's just, you know, it's got to be a way where it's not manipulated, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody has to make money. I'm a capitalist. I'm sorry. I don't I'm fine with it.
Yeah, so I think like let's just try to make this discussion again on Tuesday. And maybe Josh, you can like
I'll
allocate
put it on the agenda. We'll try to
Yeah.
put it early on the agenda. Just so you guys know, we do a meeting every Tuesday. I usually put the agenda together. We usually go over the release first. We're in the midst of very close to making a release, the RC1 or RC0 come out probably this week or next. And so that's, you know, it's a critical time that we're trying to bring a release out before October. That will take about 15 minutes of discussion. And we can put this as, you know, item number 2, so you guys can join in and jump off if you want. I don't want to hold you guys too long. There's a couple other things. We have a Kubeflow Summit coming up. I would recognize that if you guys, especially Jim, if you guys are looking to learn more about Kubeflow, if you have people in Dallas, the Kubeflow Summit's in Dallas. It's a one-day event, October 6th. It's a great way to meet some of the community, and you might find some users there as well. So whatever, I'll put it on the agenda. I'll forward it to you guys. If you can make it, fine. If not, we'll have a conversation. We'll record it. We'll take notes.
Okay, thank you. Could you also update the issue with the link to the meeting so that others who may be interested can join?
Yeah, I'll put it on the issue rather than sending an email. How about that?
Perfect.
Yeah, Josh, you will do it, right?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Right. Yeah, next Tuesday. I believe it's in the morning, right? PST.
Yeah, it's always at 8 o'clock Tuesday.
Oh, yep. 4 p.m. Makes sense.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, and we definitely like, again, like as I mentioned, like the users, like especially like AML users in Kubernetes really want it, right? So if we want to see users be successful actually using the platform, we definitely need to, like, you know, invest some time in this, because I know like many people who are actually using Spark for ML training, for example, right? Don't even use like PyTorch or TensorFlow. So yeah, I think let's try to discuss this again on Tuesday. And let's see like what broader community think about it and how we can collaborate.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, for me, I would be like, the more concrete we can be in a phase 1, even if it's very rudimentary, where it's like there's no user interface, there's no, maybe it's installed by itself as a separate item that people can pick and choose from. I mean, we can start small and go faster, but I think we have to get to a place where there's like a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we look down the road about how we grow it. But even more important than that, and Andre is after me all the time about that, how do we get the end users to show up and give comments, right?
yeah, and especially the long-term support from the contributors, right? So yeah, that makes sense.
All right, that's a good conversation. I have added one more item. I know we're at the end of time, but I thought, you know, it's late in the day for you, Andre, but one other item about LLMs. I was hoping maybe we could have a quick conversation.
Yeah, let's do it quick. Yeah, sure.
So is that all right, guys, on the Spark stuff, or do you have any other final comments? Anything else?
No, that's a very good outcome. So we'll talk more on Tuesday.
So great. So I've been doing some work around LLMs, actually doing some development, and also watching a lot of the stuff from Gantry, including Josh Tobin. I don't know if you know Josh.
Yep.
He's an one of the guys from OpenAI who founded then Gantry with another OpenAI person.
Yep.
Anyway, you know, they have some very interesting ideas about how to test LLMs. And I've been developing systems to test LLMs, especially around logic. Not so much questions of fact, but subjective answers around questions of logic. And so what this often requires is an iterative approach of testing a model against a set of prompts. And at times you're having to change the prompts and then test it against the model, or maybe test it against two models. And then there's some scoring that's involved. And then you might want to do some preference analysis, like if you've seen Chatbot Arena, if you've been watching any of that stuff. Another group that's been involved in Kubeflow, you may know Patterson Consulting, myself, have been doing some development in this space. And just wondering if you guys in the CATIB and the training operator, the AutoML, have you guys been thinking about this? And, is there a fork or an adaptation around CATIB that might help people that are training or excuse me, testing and evaluating LLMs?
Yeah, so there is a huge area about fine-tuning today, right? Which is basically, so the whole like AML lifecycle today is driven by the foundation models. So all the people did not like really train model from scratch. They just take the existing models and just do the additional optimization on top of their data. So I don't think Kubeflow actually has any good story around this today. Like full stop, right? I guess like the question about the tuning, Josh, I think it would be nice if you can just provide more context in the issue somewhere, and we can think how KDB can leverage here. Because like we've been focusing, so eventually we've been thinking about using this KDB project for many kind of different ways of doing automated machine learning, right? Of optimizing your hyperparameters to like searching for the best neural architecture, right, for your models. But right now, since like the ML world changed a little bit, we might need to think from the other direction, right? How to provide users the platform to do the fine tuning easier and faster, right? And maybe having like interfaces to I don't know, to Hugging Face, or interfaces to other kind of like the model artifact storage, where they can just take it and just do the optimization. The question is like, which product should be dedicated for this from the Kubeflow side, right? Like, should we have another sort of the APIs on the KDB side, or we should have like completely separate architecture, like another component we should leave on the Kubeflow? So this we don't know yet, because we don't have like another bandwidth, like to work on this yet. Josh, do you have any like specific, maybe you can just like explain our use case and maybe the exactly think what they want to do, and then maybe we can like discuss like where exactly this.
I have example simple code that kind of goes through this about how you would test a prompt against at least one LLM, and then score it, because you can have auto score with something like a BERT score or a Rouge, or you could have human scoring. And really what the state of the art is, from what I can see right now, is that you want to have auto scoring, and the auto scoring may even now, instead of using those older scoring techniques, may even use an LLM to score the models. And then after you score the model, you may also want some human evaluation. So there's a lot of components that are pretty much different than what CATIB does today. I mean, it's a whole different process. But Josh has asked me to see if people would be interested in kind of looking at the architecture that we're laying out, and the sample code that we're doing, which is very rudimentary at this point, and then seeing if there's some way that we could adapt, because there does seem to be a lot of interest in, even beyond the fact of once you score the model, then how to fine tune it. To your point, And you may even want to be able to test against two models at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to take a look on your like even like for like some sample codes and just to see how it works and specifically from architecture standpoint. And automated scored, yes, like yeah, it looks like very interesting. And I think like we can maybe elaborate some because of the optimization, like the optimization structure might look exactly what Ketip supports today, right? Because this concept of trials and the concept of like the suggestions, it's not only for HP tuning, right?
This is my theory, is that you guys have already thought about this experiment,
Reinforcement learning, right?
the whole process, but now we're kind of having to tweak it for LLM, right? Analysis. But the problem that I think the LLMs, beyond just trying to figure out how to score it properly, which is really hard, and automate the scoring, because the more human scoring you have, the slower the turnaround time is, right? So you want as much automated scoring as possible. How do you do that? Is another question. But then how do you drive that back into the fine tuning, to your point earlier, right? You want that loop. We want to improve that loop as fast as possible, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Well, let me take this back to, I'm supposed to talk to Josh tomorrow, and he's got 3 or 4 other companies that have been interested in trying to build this out. And we're thinking that there's an open source project here, right?
Yep.
We don't know whether we're going to build it or use somebody else's, but we're trying to figure out what is the right thought process.
Yeah.
And every time that you develop something, you guys know how this is. Every time you think you got an idea, you develop it, slippery slope. Then you figure out the 15 other things that you didn't think about when you first started doing it, right? So
yeah, we just need to. So the main problem of Ketip today is not extensible. Like we kind of like initially designed the APIs. We call this experiment, right? And we don't really think about how this can extend in the like in the more kind of techniques, so just like feature engineering or like NAS, right, or HP tuning. So like we've been discussing this before, like how we can like change our APIs to make it more extensible and definitely like support more features, because ML, like especially right now, is moving very fast, right? And we stand like a little bit behind of all of this, right? Yeah, we just need to see how this architecture, like like how these controllers that we design in Kubernetes can help to solve this task faster and easier, right, for users. But yeah, we can. Yeah, let's start the discussion around niche, and we can definitely think about it.
let me ask you this, and I'm sorry I don't know this, but in Katib, if I wanted to test a model against a prompt against 2 different models, there isn't really a mechanism in Katib right now. Say I wanted to do it against Falcon and Llama. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I think we may either have to fork or restart, or we can pull some code or concepts from, but I just don't see anyway.
So you can just do it as a hyperparameter, right? So you can select your multiple models as a hyperparameter and just define the container who will basically do the job depending on this kind of hyperparameter, right?
Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah, like, and the problem is like the container will probably not grow significantly, because you will call the Hugging Face API to get this model when out APIs, right? Open the AI API to get the model.
That's the other thing that we're doing, is that we're trying to run these on-prem rather than through the Hugging Face API. So that's we've been trying to avoid the cost of the Hugging Face APIs. And especially for a lot of companies that just need to run on-prem, which probably is good for Nutanix, right?
So what Andre was saying was a little different. So he was referring to, like, if I understand correctly, he was referring to the API to get the models, not to run inference or training. This just for you can use Hugging Face API to get models from their repository for free.
Yeah, that's right. And just fine tune them, right, based on the prompt that you that you provide, right?
Yeah, fine tuning and all these happen on-prem. I'm just saying the real model is actually from the Hugging Face repository, which is taken from repository to on-prem.
Yeah, you pull the model, but you
Right.
don't have to have, you don't need you don't have to be connected to their API to
Correct,
run.
correct.
There is an interface that's required there.
Correct.
But you know, when you talk about the hyperparameters, there's also, and I know we're over time, I'm sorry, Andre,
No
if you
worries.
need to know. There could be a lot of things that could go into hyperparameters if you watched any of this chain of thought stuff, or other types of things that go into how do you set up these models, tend to be, especially if you want to run them on-prem, there's a lot of complexities, especially if you start to say, oh, I want to use a GPU or other types of things. So I do think, and the way that we've been thinking about this architecture is that there's a reasoning workbench and there's a reasoning engine. And the engine would be the thing that runs the model, or runs the, you know, the API request, but the reasoning workbench is kind of more like this cat thing where you're setting up your prompts, you're being able to pick how you want to, you know, test them, score them, compare them, keep track of everything. That's kind of our thought right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I know.
Yeah.
I can show you more details. I just wanted to see if you guys were interested and we're working in this way. So you have a little interest, at least at this point, you know, to talk some more.
Definitely. Yeah, sure. I think like once we have like the more, as I mentioned, more kind of extensible API, we can think about how this could be useful for different use cases, because like we kind of like stack with the appropriate, you know, we just the hyperparameter tuning right now. But we definitely can achieve much more there. Yeah, so let's just continue discussion.
I think it would be good for Kubeflow. I think even outside of Kubeflow, this is such a hot topic that,
yeah,
you know,
I
is
think
what I'm spending my time on, quite frankly.
yeah, we definitely need to have some integrations with Hugging Face APIs, like for the training operator side of things, right? And also an ability to do the fine tuning, because today we don't have any even examples of fine tuning in Kubeflow, right? So the thing is, like, the training operator could also leverage just a simple one worker training for people who don't want to use distributed training, who just want to train their model on Kubernetes, right? We just need to, yeah, we might just need to think about like what kind of pieces are missing there. Like, for example, like the metrics, like model tracking, right? Or metrics tracking, right? Or like model exporter, right? Like the checkpoints, right? This does not exist today, right? So there are like some things which is missing, I believe, from a training standpoint.
Well, and there's all types of parameters that come back. I don't know if you've known, but you know, you have the loading the model, loading the tokenizer. There's a bunch of statistics that come back that we need to be able to compare as well. And part of this is like, how fast does the model actually answer the question? But, you know, the other thing is if you have to load the model, you know, and all the components on it, that takes time. And so if you're trying to build an SLA for somebody who wants to actually use one of these things, you know, you do need to keep some of these things in mind. Maybe the model is always in memory or always ready to go, but I mean, they tend to be very big, right? And so
Yeah.
there's even if you shrink them down, right? There's still Falcon 7B is still 7 billion parameters, right? And you don't go with the 40B, right?
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
all right,
anyway,
cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's just continue this discussion, Josh. Like, I'm more than happy to collaborate on all of these things, and just to see how even like the existing architecture could solve some of these issues that we never even like think about, right? Yeah, because like a lot of things already supported. Yeah, we just need to provide the appropriate example. Okay, so I think like John, like you just joined a bit late, but we discussed the Spark operator with the community, and I think like that we come up that we might need to have another discussion on the Tuesday meeting, because like we still don't know where exactly this should live. And there is another like company called basically Stakeable, right? Yes, Stakeable Tech, and they also like were interesting to maintaining this project under their GitHub organization. But the question is like, what is the best place for Spark operator to live from the user's standpoint? I can share the recording with you as well. Like we recorded this meeting, so let's just do in a discussion on Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Hey, I got one other question for you guys.
Yeah.
How concerned are you guys about 1.8 at this point?
Like bit concerned that it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
The RC cut hasn't happened. I'm not sure what is the real reason. We should have actually solved. We are missing deadlines. I think not by a bit, by weeks, right? Which is a bit concerning.
Right. And you know, it seems like we've got a slippery slope here about stuff that we're trying to get in to the release in the Kubeflow repository. Look, I'm not all bad if they get the rootless stuff in and we're late a month because we got the rootless Kubeflow capability added in.
Oh, like is it getting delayed because of that?
I think it's more getting delayed because
this is one feature that has been asked everywhere, and I even for training and cat tip, we want to target that at least in the next release for sure.
yeah, I don't know how well that'll work the first time through, but you know, I'm glad to try it and see what as like a.
But again, yeah, it's not wise to do it at this stage of very late stage, right? We have to do it if we want to plan. We have to do it at early phase, not at really during the release.
And then there was some CI/CD issue that Kimonis is trying to fix, and Matthew is causing you know, alternative development because he feels like there's a race condition in what Kimonis had prescribed as how to change the manifest, you know, operations. Or so I mean, look, I have to defer because I don't understand the actual workflow on some of those yet. I haven't dug into them, but we're way behind. I think most of the stuff is pretty mature. I assume both training operator and CatTib basically ready to go, right? You guys feel
like,
pretty.
I mean, yeah, at least to me, like we haven't seen any other issue. People haven't reported anything, so I'm assuming that like after RC cut, we won't face any issue after that. That's what I.
And the pipelines team has had their release for a while. You know, it is up to 2.0. So really, it's just a couple other working groups that we're waiting on. And I think part of this is Kimonis was on vacation. Everybody needs to go on vacation, right? And he went through a pretty hard time after the Ricto thing and then changing companies. He probably just needed a break. So I'm glad to not get too upset about it. But I just wanted to see if you guys had looked at stuff and said, hey, way
from
off
a
track.
project point of view, it is not a good signal, right? Where seeing that release is not happening at the right time, that's not a good signal. So if you really think this way, in my opinion, we have to reduce number of releases as well. Even if that is creating lots of process, I think maybe we can even have a much larger release cycle, and that's also fine. But again, when we commit to something, we have to get it through, right? At least I know there are a few people who are actually waiting for the operator releases, right? So we have to get it. If we keep delaying by weeks, it's not a good sign in general, because we are not having operator releases in between, right? They are actually waiting for many months to have a release because we are aligning with the Kubeflow release.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, can we discuss this in retrospective? I also need to drop. I agree, definitely, like, we don't need to block this. I hope, like, we can... I guess, like, the PR was merged 30 minutes ago, and I hope, like, we can do something today. So, I definitely, let's discuss this on retrospective. Like, because this is important, and we need to do something with the timing to make project be successful. So, yeah. Sounds good. So let me start let me just stop the recording then. And